Greg Bird again here from the California Family Council at the state capitol, talking to Pamela Garfield Yeager, and she just testified against a bill that we are very concerned about, AB665, dealing with minors being able to consent to not only counseling but a residential treatment outside the home.
AB665 is harmful to minors. School counselors are being trained to keep secrets from parents and take on an anti-therapeutic activist role. Instead of working with families, counselors are now dividing families, deliberately turning children against loving parents.
And I just wanted to kind of ask you something about your testimony and why you're concerned about this bill.
So I'm a licensed clinical social worker who actually worked in schools as a clinical supervisor, and I've also worked in group homes, so I have experience on both ends. So I felt compelled to speak to this in the testimony. And I feel strongly that parents need to be involved, that parents need to have a say, and that, like you said, this is a scary bill where they're taking parental rights away, and that also, even if you have the intention of helping kids, this will not help children if we do not involve parents in their treatment. So I have a lot of concerns on all ends.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I found really compelling in your testimony is just how much young people actually need their parents, especially in counseling situations. And this bill seems to be separating them.
Yes, exactly. I feel like California State is working overtime to separate children from parents, and it's interesting because our opposition was saying how mental health is declining in California and across the country, and I think one of the biggest culprits of that is because children are being separated from their parents. And if we work together with families, I think that would improve mental health tremendously. And they're proposing something that's, I believe, is going to be the complete opposite effect, which is deteriorating mental health by tearing the children away from the families.
Yeah, I mean, one of the parts of the bill says that kids as young as 12 can decide on their own to go to a group home, right? And you have experience working in group homes. Just for parents who don't know what these group homes are like, can you kind of explain what the atmosphere is like? Are group homes like better than family and parents? I mean, what kind of things happen in these group homes that you've seen, like positive and negative?
Yeah, it's rarely better than the home. Even in the past, when there was allegations of abuse, pulling the child out of a home, even to a foster home, was a very last resort. And then the group home is a last resort after a foster home. So the group homes are the places where they put children truly who have behavioral issues, where it's really difficult for them to be in any placement. So to think that this is going to be the first step for children is a scary prospect. Because basically what these group homes do is they get together and they learn bad behaviors together. So the children learn cutting behaviors, they learn substance abuse. Unfortunately, one of the group homes I was working at, there was a counselor. They did catch him, but for a while was doing marijuana with the children. And they're low-paid staff. It's a terrible environment. Also, they're unlocked, and many of the kids will end up running away because there are problems at the group home. They're putting children who are the wrong sex together, so that's a whole other issue too. Yeah. But there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of violence, and the staff can't handle it, so kids run away. And when kids run away, they often end up in the hands of very bad people, such as sex traffickers. So that's a whole other fear.
Wow. Well, I appreciate you coming out and testifying today. Folks, we need to be aware and to speak up and to talk to your legislators about this really dangerous bill, right? You can't wait we can't wait until this comes to your front door before you do or say anything. So you're responsible for your own legislator. Make sure they know about this bill. This bill will now go to the assembly floor, I believe, where every legislator will vote on it. And we need to make sure every legislator knows that there are parents who are against this bill. So thank you so much.
Forum California Chairman Carl DeMaio. Carl, good morning. This is a very, very, very concerning. Tell us exactly what is AB 665.
Yeah, well, I think we should retitle it AB 666, because it really is just so twisted and wrong, putting our kids in danger, completely undermining parental rights. So this is part of the larger extremist movement that says that parents are bad, parents are hateful and homophobic, and they're going to hurt their kids if the kids are having gender questions. which is a bunch of nonsense. Parents love their kids. They're going to support their kids. They just want to make sure that their kids are not doing things too early in life that are irreversible. That's just called common sense. But that is the intent here, is to empower the state, empower third-party organizations and activists, really. So AB 665 has two concerning provisions. First, well, before we get into the two provisions, California has a very extensive set of laws to allow for the removal of children from dangerous situations. So nobody here is challenging the notion that we should have strong support for children who are being abused and that we should get them out of abusive homes. We already have ample laws for that and checks and balances. But AB 665 makes two major changes to those laws. Number one, it says that going forward, that the decision to remove a child as young as 12 years of age and put them in a, quote, residential shelter, which is just another name for homeless shelter, that decision no longer needs to have a finding of credible threat to child. That in the existing law, the decision has to be bolstered or proven by either a threat to the child from the parents, evidence of previous child abuse or sexual assault and molestation, or that the child may hurt themselves or others. And so that was the standard that had to be met in order for a child to be removed. Pretty common sense. That language is all stricken. The only thing that needs to be demonstrated is that in the opinion of the person signing the piece of paper, the child as young as 12 has enough maturity to make their own decisions and live on their own, which, again, give me a break. Children as young as 12 cannot live on their own. The second major change that is very alarming, Jason, is it used to be that a licensed psychotherapist, a licensed counselor had to be the one making the determination and had to be the one signing off. In an extraordinary move of negligence, this bill, AB 665, says that no longer do you have to be licensed. You can be a trainee or an intern in an organization that has a licensed therapist or psychologist. This is absurd. The idea that a trainee or an intern gets to make the decision for a kid as young as 12 to remove them from their parents' home. This is dangerous, it's offensive, and it's going to result in kids getting hurt. It's also illegal. There's no due process here for parents.
Carl, where does this come from? What are the roots of this? This seems to be like just an anti-parent movement by the left.
These people have lost their minds. They are so arrogant. They are actually pursuing dangerous agendas. Now, they think that they're right because these children, need to be cared for by the LGBT activists. No, butt your nose out of it. Parents get to decide. And this is what parents are most fearful of, is that kids, when they're growing up, they don't know what they don't know. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. I mean, we've all been there, right? We all remember our childhoods and perhaps making some bad decisions as our parents, looked at us with an eyebrow raised or told us, no, you can't do that. And now today we are so grateful that we had parents that said, no, you can't do that. And so if you remove that, it's going to result in absolute insanity. And these kids are going to get hurt. Let kids be kids. Let parents parent. And we have a system in place for true child abuse. This is not child abuse. It's not a bill that will result in any good outcomes. So this is a radical agenda. The Democrats all voted for it in the state Senate. It's going to pass the Assembly. Governor Gavin Newsom is likely going to sign it because these people just can't help themselves. They literally are untethered from any sort of rational thinking when it comes to this far left radical agenda that these LGBT activists are pursuing. And Jason, let me just tell you, as a gay Republican, I know a lot of Democrats, independents, and gay Republicans in the gay community that are outraged at this bill. They have kids, they are parents, and they say that they would not want to see this bill passed. But sadly, the LGBT community is being used as the window dressing for bad legislation we need to raise our voices and urge that this bill be shelved.
You talk about moral compasses that are completely out of whack. How can our viewers make their voices heard? Is there anything we can do at this point to counter AB 665?
Sure. First and foremost, share the news. Most people are not aware of this. The other media channels are not wanting to cover the bill because they know how extraordinarily bad the bill is and what a boomerang effect it would create with voters. And so we need to open the eyes, particularly of Latino voters, independent voters, Democrat moms and dads. And so share the story that we've posted at reformcalifornia.org, reformcalifornia.org. Also, we want to make this an issue in the upcoming elections. We believe that anyone who voted for this bill cannot be trusted to be in office anymore. They are reckless, they're negligent. And so if you can chip in a contribution, if you can sign up to be a volunteer at reformcalifornia.org, please help us fight insanity like this. And the best way to do that is obviously to spread the word and to throw some of these folks out of office come the election.
Brad, thank you for joining me here today to discuss AB 665, which was recently passed. Now, could you start with a brief overview of what's your thoughts on this bill?
Yeah, this is a horrific bill when it comes to parental rights and undermining the rights of parents. What it says is it's going to change the law to allow counselors, mental health counselors, possibly like a school counselor, for example, to take a child and put the child over the age of 12, has to be over the age of 12 or over, and put that child into a mental health residential facility without parental consent. Now, right now, under the law, in order for this to be done, there has to be reports of incest or an immediate threat to the child's health or safety, that they're likely going to try to commit suicide or harm themselves physically or mentally. That right now, that's what has to be shown and before a child can be taken and put into a mental health facility without parental consent. This obliterates those qualifiers and gives tremendous latitude for a mental health counselor to be able to take a child away from the parents, put them in this residential mental hospital for youth, and the parents have no say in the matter. Due process is out the window.
Could you talk about how this would impact communities and families in California?
Yeah, basically what this does is it puts a cloud of fear over moms and dads up and down the state of California, just knowing that at any time they could lose their child. And specifically, this legislation is targeting those children who might have same-sex sexual attraction issues or confusion or gender identity confusion. This is what it's really targeting, so that a counselor can simply take the child away from the family under the grounds that the parents have maybe traditional religious beliefs and convictions, and therefore are an inherent danger or concern for the child, even though they're not having to prove anything or show any evidence. Presently, under California law, in order for a child to be taken from a home, then by a social worker, there has to be a showing of a reasonable suspicion of abuse or neglect against the child by the parents. This throws that out. No longer. If you can show that that child is potentially not affirmed in terms of their sexuality or gender identity confusion, you can lose your child. That is what this brings to the table. It's basically a legalized kidnapping. When you take a child without any reasonable due process, without any actual imminent threat of harm to the child to justify it, that's kidnapping. That's why many people refer to this as the kidnapping bill of California.
Now, what can parents do in terms to, claim custody or bring their children back?
Well, first off, if any parent at any time sees this as a pending threat of risk or harm, potentially with regard to their child, they should not hesitate to contact Pacific Justice Institute. The fact is, David, we are looking right now for plaintiffs who can show that they have a risk or a harm that they may lose their child has some mental issues, some emotional issues that could in some way justify them losing their child under this legislation. So I encourage parents in that situation to contact us at PJI. I also encourage parents to download our very important parental resources called 12 Steps to Protect Your Children from CPS or social workers. It's available without charge on our website, pji.org, pji.org. We have other great resources there empowering parents as well. But parents need to understand things are not the same. And particularly in states like California, blue states predominantly, parents do not have the rights of due process that they think they do, and they can easily have their children taken. And this legislation will be an incentive, mark my words, for more and more parents to say, enough of California, I'm moving to Texas or Tennessee or Florida or somewhere else that is more respectful of the rights of parents.
Since we're also talking about different states, what are the national implications that this California legislation could have on other states?
Well, right now in California, we have already passed a legislation that allows, it's a similar kidnapping protection legislation that allows a kidnapper, say from California, to go to Texas, go to another state, say to a family in Dallas, and to be able, they could kidnap that child and take that child to California without the parents knowing, the legal guardian knowing. And that kidnapper, under California law, will be protected from any criminal prosecution for the kidnapping if it can be shown that the reason they kidnapped the child was to enable the child to undergo a gender transformation, to become a transgender, to quote unquote change their gender. Now, genetically, that's impossible. You cannot genetically change any cell to say something different with regard to your gender. But as far as cutting off body parts, getting injected with drugs or hormones, that's what we're talking about here to a minor child by a kidnapper. And that protects the kidnapper from being prosecuted, and the parents have no right to see the child or even the medical records of the child to know what body parts were cut off and what was injected into their son or daughter. It is horrific. It's a clear violation of the full faith and credit clause of the Constitution.
How about the child's role in all of this?
Well, first, I want to make it really clear. We're talking about a child, a minor. And the law basically says, generally speaking, minors are not to be given whatever they want. In fact, studies show that if a children with gender identity dysphoria is simply just left alone and not encouraged to have the confusion, just left alone, more than 90% of them will no longer even have that confusion by the time they graduate from high school. So that's how fluid children are, and yet we're allowing third parties, potentially strangers, to be able to kidnap a child simply because at that moment they have those feelings, and that's all that's needed to violate the rights of parents and to permanently sterilize and tragically traumatize a child for many, many years to come.
Brad, thank you so much for your time. It's great having you on the show.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure. Take care.